Today, lending consumer style gets a free pass. Hello again, I'm Martin North, the Principal Analyst of Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to our latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. The Senate Economics Reference Committee released their report, Credit and Hardship, report of the Senate inquiry into credit and financial products targeted at Australians at risk of financial hardship. The committee was chaired by Senator Chris Kedder, and the deputy was Senator Jane Hume. It comprised 3 ALP senators, 2 Liberal Party senators, and a Green. Now, this report got very little media attention, but it is important because consumer debt continues to rise, and it keeps coming up in our surveys. And by the way, if you value the content we produce, please do consider supporting our efforts. You can make a one-off donation via PayPal, here's the link, or consider joining our Patreon program. Again, here is the link. We really appreciate your support to continue to help us to make great content. The links are also in the comments below. So first, some context. Compared with the $1.7 trillion mortgage market and the $2.8 trillion superannuation sector, the $168 billion consumer credit market may seem at first blush small beer. Yet, despite the fact that the banks are lending less now, there has been an astronomical rise in lending from what I call alternative lenders, commercial entities offering consumer credit to households. In fact, our data shows that there's been a strong rise in alternative lending. It makes up, well, over 30% of all personal credit now, and within that we see car loans, personal loans, and both small and medium-term credit provided by so-called payday lenders. Much of this lending is targeting households who have greater need for credit than they can afford, and often fall foul of such lenders, many of whom advertise heavily on TV, radio, and online. And in fact, online growth has outstripped all other channels and is hardly regulated. And to give you a sense of the relative size of the markets, payday loans are worth about $1 billion in value, while medium-term contracts are more than double that. So this is a small segment of the overall personal credit market, but it's a very troublesome segment, with effective interest rates which can, due to the generous fee caps, typically attract comparison annual interest rates of between 112 and 407%. The vast majority of payday lenders charge the maximum amount permitted by legislation, as competition is generally ineffective in bringing down prices in this market, according to a submission by the Consumer Action Law Centre. And we see a high correlation between mortgage stress and households tapping into these loans, so it's part of a broader debt spiral. And there's also been a lack of focus by government for years on this sector. Whilst the Banking Royal Commission did not contemplate marginal credit service providers such as payday lenders, consumer leases and debt advice firms, and many Australians do not interact with these products, they do loom large in the financial lives of lower income Australians and dominate the casework of financial counsellors and credit lawyers. What these products all have in common, however, is the oversized risk they pose specifically to Australians in financial hardship. The committee heard from financial counsellors and credit lawyers about the financial troubles that affect too many vulnerable Australians. The work that the financial counsellors and credit lawyers do is important, and the committee took their evidence very seriously. A submission from United Care highlights the fact that financial hardship impacts more than just a person's finances. Sue and Bob live in Broadmeadows, 20 kilometres north of Melbourne's central business district, with their 2 children aged 12 and 16. Sue works full-time and earns $1,030 a week, and Bob is on New Start and receives around $200 a fortnight. He's unable to work after he had an accident while driving a company truck in September 2017 and injured his back. He is unable to work and not receiving work cover, as at the time of the accident, Bob was unlicensed. Bob took out payday loans from MoneyMe, Wallet Wizard and Sunshine Loans to pay for the registration of their 2 cars, as well as covering utility bills and rent when money was tight. They could not afford the loans, but were desperate because they didn't want to be evicted or disconnected. Repayments on the 3 loans was around $550 a fortnight, with very high interest rates and fees, meaning that they will be paying these loans for a significant period of time. and they have not sought support from family as they feel ashamed. Sue suffers from anxiety and Bob depression. After paying rent and the loan repayments, the family is left with $635 a week, well below the 2018 poverty line of $742 a week disposable income. And this is not an isolated instance. Independent research found that 2.1 million Australians are under severe or high financial stress. In fact, the concern over high costs of credit is a long-standing one. The government commissioned a review of the small amount credit contract, the SACC industry, in 2015, and it found widespread problems throughout the industry. In relation to consumer leases, it found that the current regulatory framework is not effective in promoting financial inclusion. The exposure draft of legislation was developed in 2017, and Treasury undertook a consultation process in relation to it. But there has been no apparent action since then, and there has been media coverage of the internal government tensions that may have contributed to this delay. Irrespective of the cause of the inaction, its consequences have been clear. Since the government released the SACC review report in April 2016, we estimate that 3 million additional payday loans worth more than $1.85 billion have been taken out. And this has generated a net profit of about $250 million for lenders, and around 1/5, or around 332,000 households, were new payday borrowers. These providers have gone largely unchecked for too long, and the delay in the introduction of the 2016 recommendations encapsulated in the exposure draft bill and the failure to pass the subsequently introduced private members bill have allowed product providers to continue to offer products unsuitable to many of their consumers. The committee recommended that the early legislation be introduced. Yet, meantime, the conduct of these lenders appears to be, well, pretty disgraceful, with evidence that they are able to avoid the rules by moving borrowers into longer-term medium amount contracts. This is because the so-called small amount credit contracts up to $2,000 has one set of rules, while loans between $2,000 and $5,000 has another. And in the report, they quoted microfinance provider Good Shepherd Finance. A lot of the lenders out there are pushing the applicant to go above the $2,000 because the regulations, in their opinion, are too tight on the small amount credit contract market. And over the last 12 to 18 months, a number of lenders have stopped offering that product and offer a line of credit because it's easier, it's less regulated, in their opinion. So they can get someone on the drip, basically, and they just continually earn money that way. And they're also targeting the younger generation. If you look at their advertising, they're always down at the beach, they're relaxing, they're having a drink, and stuff like that. It's very much targeted towards the younger generation. And as Morris Blackburn lawyers put it, providers do take a very close and careful look at the legislation and work out how they cannot be bound by it. I think a broad-based and substantive anti-avoidance provision that is clearly directed at schemes or arrangements, something broader than contracts, is necessary. Then there is the issue of debt repair and recovery services, where often the fee paid to the provider is disproportionate to the service delivered and can leave consumers worse off. In many cases, the fees and contract structures are deliberately complex in order to mask the total cost of the service. And low financial literacy among consumers means that many are unaware they're dealing with a for-profit entity. Individuals who are using these types of services could receive help from financial counsellors or community legal services, and again, at no cost, they can have an independent ombudsman scheme help resolve disputes with lenders, telecommunications, and utility providers. And turning to the buy now, pay later services like ZipPay and Afterpay, they recommend a regulation framework be developed and the buy now, pay later sector develop an industry code of practice. Recent evidence from ASIC suggests that 20% of users get into financial strife, yet currently buy now, pay later are not regulated as credit products. And finally, the committee rightly recognised that the delivery mechanism for financial products has changed since the advent of online and digital marketing. Consumers are increasingly at risk of targeting by providers through methods that create an imbalance between the consumer and the credit provider. For those who are financially vulnerable, this is of particular risk. The committee therefore recommends that the Australian Securities Investments Commission review how financial products and services, including credit, are advertised and issue an updated regulatory guide to how credit products interact with consumers in an online environment. But in my view, they're missing the main point. Once people sign up into a lender's portal, they can be offered all sorts of deals out of sight and mind. Our surveys show many get repeat deals and special rates, all behind the firewall and away from the public gaze. So standing back, there seems to me to be a reluctance by government to get to grips with this segment of the credit market, one which targets more vulnerable households and who are willing and able to exploit them. So let's hope that the legislation will be tabled. But given the upcoming election, do not hold your breath. If you liked what you saw here today, please like the post and add a comment or question. I read them all. And do share it via your social media channels. And if you have not yet subscribed, please ring that bell to receive alerts on future posts. And if you have already subscribed, many thanks. I appreciate your support. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.